Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The bell rang in the large, modern high school, signaling the morning break. In the courtyard, groups of students laughed, chatted, or scrolled on their phones. But the center of attention was a newcomer, Amina, a 17-year-old black girl, recently transferred. With her bag slung over her shoulder and a calm yet determined gaze, she walked on, unconcerned by the stares. 3 students known for their provocations, Lucas, Jordan, and Emily, arrogant and prejudiced bullies, approached her. They made hurtful remarks, mocking her skin color and accent. The crowd began to gather, some laughing nervously, others uncomfortable. Amina didn't answer. She remained upright, staring coldly at her tormentors. This silence, far from calming them, enraged Lucas. He shoved her violently in front of everyone. A shocked "oh" rippled through the courtyard. But what no one knew was that Amina was no ordinary student. Since the age of 10, she had been training in boxing, having won several regional tournaments. She exuded discipline, strength, and respect. In a swift, precise, and controlled movement, she dodged the second push and immobilized Lucas with a clean gesture, without even straining. Silence fell over the court. Jordan and Emily instinctively recoiled, their faces shifting from arrogance to astonishment. Amina released him immediately, without unnecessary violence, and said in a calm but firm voice, "I didn't come here to fight. But if you want to test my patience, know that I'm a boxer." A murmur rippled through the students. For the first time, the bullies looked fragile. And in that suspended moment, everyone understood that the new student wasn't just a target, she was a force to be reckoned with. It was an ordinary Monday morning at St. Clair High School. The hallways buzzed with conversations, lockers clattered, and the air smelled of a mixture of cheap deodorant and scalding coffee from the cafeteria machine. But that day, a new figure caught everyone's attention. 17-year-old Amina had just stepped through the doors of the building. She walked with a confident stride, though her gaze betrayed a slight apprehension. Her dark skin and long, neatly tied braids made her stand out immediately in this high school where diversity was rare. A few students stared at her, others whispered amongst themselves. "Did you see? A new one. Where do you think she's from?" Amina didn't respond to the insistent stares. Used to changing schools, her mother had had to move several times for work, she knew that every new school year was a test. She took a deep breath, tightened the strap of her bag, and headed toward her first classroom. In the shadows, a trio of students were already watching her. Lucas, Jordan, and Emily, known for their arrogance and mockery, were exchanging knowing smiles. "The news won't last 2 days with us," Lucas sneered. "We're going to have a lot of fun," added Emily in a venomous tone. What they didn't know was that Amina hid within her a strength that few teenagers her age could understand. The morning passed without incident. Amina took her place at the back of the math room, focused, carefully noting the teacher's explanations. A few curious students glanced at her furtively, others seemed to ignore her completely. During the break, she headed towards the courtyard, hoping to find a quiet corner to catch her breath. She sat down on a bench, took out a small bottle of water and observed the groups around her. That's when the trio made their entrance. Lucas, tall and strong, stepped forward first, followed by Jordan, thinner but with a mocking smile, and Emily, who crossed her arms with a haughty air. "So, what's the news?" Lucas launched into his attack, planting himself in front of her. "Do you think this is your neighborhood or something?" Jordan added with a chuckle. "Honestly, with your braids and your serious expression, it looks like you've lost your way." Emily sighed, a contemptuous smile on her lips. A few students approached, forming a discreet circle. Their eyes shone with curiosity, as if they sensed that something was about to happen. Amina remained silent. She took a sip of water, put away her bottle, then calmly looked up at them. Her gaze, firm and confident, momentarily shook the trio's self-assurance. "I don't have time to waste with you," she replied in a calm voice. But far from defusing the situation, this response fueled Lucas's fury. He approached abruptly and smacked his bag, knocking it to the ground. A murmur of shock rippled through the courtyard. Everyone was waiting for Amina's reaction. Amina's bag fell heavily to the ground, scattering a few notebooks. The courtyard suddenly fell silent, each student holding their breath. Lucas crossed his arms, a satisfied smile plastered on his face, convinced he had won. But Amina remained motionless for a few seconds, as if calculating each move. Then, slowly, she stood up. Her figure, though slender and graceful, exuded a disconcerting confidence. Her eyes, fixed on Lucas, did not waver. "Pick it up," she said calmly. The audience stifled a nervous laugh. Lucas burst into a hearty laugh. "What? You think you're giving me orders, newbie?" He moved forward, ready to push her again. But this time, Amina moved. Her movement was swift, precise, fluid. She dodged his attack with a simple sidestep and, at the same time, grabbed his wrist. In the blink of an eye, she twisted him, using her own momentum against him. Surprised, Lucas found himself on his knees, immobilized, his arm twisted in a simple but painful lock. A general "oh" shook the courtyard. Some students took out their phones, others held their breath. Amina released him immediately, without unnecessary roughness. Lucas stepped back, red with shame, rubbing his wrist. Jordan and Emily, who had been laughing just moments before, took a step back. "I'm not looking for trouble. But I'm not a victim either," she declared in a clear voice. The rumor had already begun to spread through the crowd. "The new girl, she knows a thing or two about fighting." No one yet knew that this was not just a simple fight, it was boxing, learned and mastered over years. The courtyard was in a frenzy. Murmurs spread like wildfire from every corner. The astonished students kept repeating the scene they had just witnessed: Lucas, the most feared bully in the school, brought to his knees in a fraction of a second by the news. Jordan, nervous, tried to save face. "You think you're strong because you did a little magic trick," he said, chuckling. But her voice trembled slightly, betraying her fear. Emily, for her part, remained speechless. Her crossed arms were no longer enough to hide her discomfort. "But, how did you do that?" she finally asked, curiosity overcoming her arrogance. Amina took a deep breath, calmly gathered her bag and notebooks, then straightened up. She scanned the crowd, aware that every word would count. "It's not a magic trick. It's training," she said calmly. She paused, then added in a confident voice. "I'm a boxer. Since I was 10. A heavy silence fell, immediately followed by a clamor of reactions. "What? A female boxer? No wonder she dumped him like that." Lucas, still dazed, struggled to his feet, his face red with anger and shame. But this time, he didn't take another step toward her. Jordan and Emily, for their part, looked away, unable to meet Amina's gaze. In the eyes of the assembled students, something had changed. The new girl was no longer a fragile stranger. She had become, in an instant, a respected, feared, and admired figure. The scene in the courtyard had been filmed by at least 3 cell phones. No sooner had the bell rung than the videos were already circulating in the hallways. In less than an hour, the entire school was talking about the new student who had humiliated Lucas. "Did you see that? She knocked him to the ground like it was nothing. Of course, she's a professional boxer." "Professional? Serious?" "I don't know, but she has incredible reflexes." The rumor mill was churning, with everyone adding their own version. Some said she had fought in national championships, others fabricated stories about how she had already knocked out an adult. The truth didn't matter, Amina had become the #1 topic of conversation. In the locker room, Lucas was fuming. "It's not over. I'm not going to let myself be humiliated in front of everyone," he groaned, kicking a locker. Jordan tries to calm him down. "Brother, forget it, did you see how she moves? She'll break you if you do that again." Emily, more silent, frowned. We've made fools of ourselves. If we persist, it will be worse. Meanwhile, Amina walked through the corridors, her bag over her shoulder. She heard the whispers, the intrigued, sometimes admiring glances. Some students stepped aside as she passed, others greeted her shyly as if she were already a celebrity. Amina, however, kept a cool head. She hadn't sought out this spectacle. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "This time, no one will make me back down." In the afternoon, Amina went into history class. The room was already buzzing with whispers. Some students were stealing glances at her, others were talking only about the court scene. Professor Garnier, a stern man known for his uncompromising nature, placed his glasses on the desk and scanned the classroom. He quickly noticed the unusual commotion. "What's going on now?" he asked curtly. One student, a little too enthusiastic, blurted out, "Sir, that's the news. Lucas was blown up in the yard this morning." The whole class burst into laughter and murmurs. Lucas, sitting 2 rows away, curled up in his chair, his face closed off. The professor frowned, then turned to Amina. "Is that true, miss? You got into a fight?" The room fell silent at once. Everyone was waiting for her answer. Amina calmly sat up, her gaze fixed on the professor. "No, sir. I didn't fight. I only avoided an attack." Mr. Garnier stared at her, surprised by her firm and controlled tone. He remained silent for a few seconds, then declared, "I do not tolerate violence in my classroom. But I respect those who know how to defend themselves without crossing the line." A murmur rippled through the room. Some students exchanged astonished glances. Never before had this teacher recognized a student in this way. Lucas, for his part, clenched his fists under his table. The humiliation he felt only grew. In his mind, an idea was already beginning to germinate. He had to take revenge, no matter the cost. After school, Lucas hung around in a corner of the courtyard with Jordan and Emily. His face was still marked by anger. Every time a student walked past them snickering or whispering, he felt his ego crumble a little more. "Everyone's talking about her now. Me, Lucas, humiliated by a girl," he groaned, banging his fist against the wall. "You have to admit, she's strong," replied Jordan, sounding a little worried. "If you keep messing with it, you'll just make things worse." "That's precisely it, we mustn't provoke her head on." "We must trap her," said Emily, her gaze cold and calculating. Lucas turned his head towards her. "To trap?" "Yes. We'll provoke her, but this time in front of an adult, or even the supervisor. That way, she'll be the one who looks violent, not you." A wicked smile stretched across Lucas's lips. "Not bad. If she cracks, she'll be fired." Jordan nodded, torn between fear and excitement. "But we have to be careful. She doesn't seem like the type to lose control easily. So, we're going to find his weak point," Emily concluded confidently. A few meters away, a student had heard everything. It was Nadir, quiet and passionate about sports, who had already met Amina in science class. He frowned and thought to himself, "They're planning something nasty. I have to warn her." Nadir wasn't one to get involved in conflicts. Shy, with slightly hunched shoulders, he preferred to stay in the shadows. Yet, when he saw Lucas and his group conspiring, something tightened inside him. He knew the violence of mockery and knew that things could escalate. After class, he mustered his courage and joined Amina near the gym, where she was putting away her things. She was bent over her bag, adjusting her boxing gloves, a habit she kept after training. "Hey, Amina," said Nadir, his voice a little hesitant. She raised her head, surprised but unsuspecting. "Yes," she replied. He took a breath. "Listen. I heard Lucas and the others. They want to trick you into appearing aggressive in front of a supervisor. Be careful." Amina remained calm, but her eyes darkened slightly. "Thanks for letting me know." "Do you know who told me that?" she asked. I heard snippets of sentences. They think that if you lose your temper, they're guaranteed to be seen as the victims. Nadir explained. I also wanted to tell you that if you need anything, I can stay around. A small smile crossed Amina's lips, grateful. That's kind of you, Nadir. But it's not up to you to risk getting into trouble for me. I know, but I can't just stand here and do nothing, he replied, determined. Amina sighed softly, then briefly placed a hand on Nadir's shoulder, a simple gesture but full of trust. Be careful. If something goes wrong, get an adult. And if you want, we can train together sometime. Nadir, surprised and honored, nodded enthusiastically. My pleasure, he said, his voice full of new hope. As they parted ways, Amina knew the situation could worsen, but she was no longer alone. A discreet ally had just joined her side, ready to watch the shadows where ill intentions were being plotted. The next day, tension was already palpable. Lucas, Jordan, and Emily had everything planned. Their plan was simple: provoke Amina somewhere an adult was bound to pass by. And if there was a fight, she would be the one accused of overreacting. The recess bell rang. The courtyard gradually emptied, but a corridor near the supervisor's room remained busy. It was there that the trio had chosen to strike. Lucas pretended to bump into Amina by chance. He deliberately dropped his books in front of her, then, with a sudden movement, sent them flying against her legs. Watch out, new girl. Can't you see you're blocking the way? He said, in a voice loud enough to attract attention. Jordan immediately stepped forward, playing his part. Yeah, we know you like to fight, but this isn't a boxing ring. Emily added, feigning outrage. It's her, sir, she cried when she saw a supervisor approaching in the distance. She's always trying to provoke us. Eyes began to turn. The trap was closing. If Amina reacted with a sudden gesture, everyone would think she was the aggressor. But Amina didn't move. She calmly picked up her notebooks, slowly straightened up, and looked Lucas in the eyes. Her face remained impassive, but her fists, clenched at the edge of her pockets, betrayed her inner control. She said in a clear voice, audible to all. I don't need to fight to show who I am. The crowd, surprised, remained frozen. The supervisor, intrigued, quickened his pace to understand the scene. But before he arrived, Lucas, frustrated by this calm, suddenly raised his hand, ready to push it again. That was the fatal mistake. In a fraction of a second, Amina dodged the gesture and took a step to the side. Lucas lost his balance, toppled forward and crashed heavily against his own locker, to the muffled laughter of the spectators. The supervisor arrived just in time to see Lucas on the ground, groaning in pain, and Amina, perfectly still, hands visible, without having struck. The supervisor, Mr. Lefebvre, arrived running, slightly panting. He observed the scene, Lucas lying against the locker, red with shame and pain, Jordan and Emily backing away, frozen with surprise, and Amina standing, calm and motionless, her hands visible. What's going on here? Mr. Lefebvre asked, his voice firm. Trembling, Emily opened her mouth to accuse Amina, but no words came out. Jordan lowered his eyes, unable to meet the adult's gaze. Lucas, still stunned, grumbled. It's her. Amina, unperturbed, addressed Mr. Lefebvre. Sir, I didn't attack anyone. They tried to provoke me and you, Lucas? Mr. Lefebvre cut in, crossing his arms. I lost my balance, Lucas murmured, red with shame. The truth then became clear to everyone: it was the trio who had tried to set a trap for Amina. The murmurs turned into bursts of laughter or admiring glances. Amina's reputation grew even more. Not only could she defend herself, but she had remained calm in the face of a carefully orchestrated provocation. Even Lucas, humiliated, understood that he could no longer underestimate her. Jordan and Emily, for their part, made themselves as small as possible, murmuring inaudible apologies. Nadir, who had been observing the scene from the edge of the courtyard, smiled shyly. He knew that the new student had just earned more than respect, she had just established herself in this high school, not through violence, but through her composure, courage, and discipline. Amina finally gathered her belongings and left the stage, aware that this was only the beginning of her life at this high school. But from now on, no one would dare underestimate her.